It's okay.
Right.
And until something happens, and you say, well, we had this discussion 2 years ago, and you said, hey, you know,
Yeah, it's good to save emails. Now he mentions our SATA drive sufficient. If you get a entry level server, entry level chassis, it may only have connections for SATA. So
right.
that's going to be fine, especially on a low end server. I would again explain to them that the lower, as with anything, the cheaper anything you get, it's not going to be as good, not going to be as fast, whatever. Now the processors in a server, I always go with two. I don't put one processor in any server. I go two processors.
Hmm.
Processors aren't that expensive. Yeah, maybe $500-$600 or more or less, but it's worth it to have two processors, especially if it's your only server that's doing a file serving. Probably going to be an antivirus server.
Yeah, I agree. I
It's
mean,
going to be
and you
yeah,
have to think that that bot is running so many different services. It serves many roles. How Matt was explaining, so I cut him off. But yeah, I mean, keep that in mind. And correct me if I'm wrong. The Essentials version can only run on a 60. There's only a 64-bit the version. Is that correct?
I believe that is correct.
Let me.
Yes.
I got the website up. Yep, the requirements are one single core or dual core 64-bit processor.
Yep.
Mhm.
So in this case, what I'd probably do is, if from having a discussion with budget, let's say I know that the backup exec is too far above what they want to spend, and let's say it's not, I would probably do two quotes, one for the entry level server, one for a higher up server. On a separate quote, I would have a quote for the backups, a separate backup system. Now, because if they go with the built-in backup, it's just a few extra hard drives. So I'd probably have two quotes, one basic, one higher up with the bells and whistles, let's say
Mhm.
hot swappable drives, faster drives, and a third quote that's for the backup system. That's probably what I would do in this situation.
No, and I agree. And I found out that doing it in that way always is to your benefit because at times you can't read the client. Does he want to spend what he needs to spend? So I would give him a good, better, and best option. Explain the benefits of all three, and then there were times where I thought that the client who would pick the good option would pick the best option. Don't be afraid to let them know what's available to them because they are paying for these services. So Matt's right. Give them two options, at least two.
Yep. And he mentions RAID 5. I rarely do RAID 5.
Really?
Rarely. Yeah. We usually RAID 1. Um, I found a lot of vendors don't want their software or their data on a RAID 5 array because of the hit you take for the so a lot of customer, or let's say I've got a client there, they want to install this new package. They give me the specs of what they need, and a lot of them say they don't support RAID 5 data, RAID 5 arrays.
Okay, so you do it
So,
for the application requirement.
well, I do it one, it's usually big enough. I mean, if I need a big array, I'll go with a RAID 5,
Well,
but
because my worry would be, unless you're monitoring the server or they tell you the light is blinking or there's an issue with a mirror, if one drive goes bad, I mean, you're putting the client is putting themselves in a risk there.
yeah, well, you can lose one drive with a RAID 5 because a lot of them, when they go with the RAID 5, it's 3 disks, whereas a RAID 1 is 2, and a lot of them don't want 4 or 5 drives for redundancy. So
Okay, that's true.
it,
Okay.
it's as on a small business, they're going to spend more. So if you have a basic RAID 5 with the 3 disks, you can still only lose one.
I got you. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking from the corporate environment type of deal.
Yeah,
So
and we have a lot of clients that need larger arrays, so those are RAID 5 arrays. But on an average small business server, a RAID 1, being that we have usually at least 3 RAID 1s, they're all split up. So, and there is monitoring, there is alert set up, so if anything fails, we know about it. So, and if they don't pay for us to monitor it, I make sure that there's a nice loud alarm that's going to bug the cheese out of them until they call us.
There's this beeping, and we have no idea where it's coming from. It's coming from that one room, and we're afraid.
Exit the building.
Yeah.
So,
all right, man. I think you did an excellent question answering Dante's question. So hopefully you're good to go now or have a better idea about the path that you want to take. I definitely agree with your good and best option. So, give the client an option. Because then if they go with the good option, not the best, and they say, why is it I don't have this feature? Here's an email that we discussed, and you chose option A.
yeah, and I save all the quotes. I can show them. Man, look, this is I sent you this
sure.
with all three. Two. I would do two probably. I wouldn't do three, but you can definitely do three with good, better, best. I usually do the budget and some of the upgrades. So, but you can definitely do three to get more options out. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Nope. All right, great. That's email from Jason. Matt, love the show and all the talk about the servers. Keep up the awesome work. I have recently taken over a new client and I have been asked to set up a sales email account on his Change 2007. I have made the mail account. However, I was needing to add this to a current user's Outlook profile. How about we call this person Mary? So Mary needs her normal email set up in Outlook via Exchange, and I also need to add an additional email account to her Outlook. I found where I can add the additional mailbox to her Outlook. However, I get you don't have permission error when I click on the sales email account, and the folder list will not show either. I worked on servers quite a bit, but never had too much dealings with a change so far. So could you walk us through this from creating a mailbox to setting up an extra mailbox on the client machine?
All right. So in this instance, I can tell you the quick answer.
Okay.
We'll go with the quick answer, but there's some other things you might be able to do. So the quick answer is if you go to Exchange Management Console, I think you missed a step. You go to Exchange Management Console. Let's say you find, I'm assuming he created a new account called Sales. So you find that account, you right click on it, and when you right click on it, you'll get a drop down menu. One of those things is manage full access permission and manage send as permission. So if you just right click on the account on Sales, click on manage, I would just give it full access. Manage full access permission. You'll get a window where you can add a user. So in here, let's say we add Mary. And we add Mary to basically grant full access to the Sales email account. Now, at that point, you can expand the mailbox without getting access denied. And what he's talking about, for those who don't know what he means, in Outlook, you can set it to where you can open up additional mailboxes.
Yes.
So not just your mailbox, you can see somebody else's. But first, you have to grant them access in this way.
Mm-hmm.
In 2003, it was different. 2003, you went actually into, let's say, you would go into the Sales account, go to properties. I think there's some mailbox rights, and there you can add users. But on here, you have to go into Exchange Management Console, right-click the user, and manage full access permissions. But that's the way to get around what he's doing.
And that's the easy way.
Well, maybe not.
All right.
Well, that's the answer of why you can't expand it. So if he does that and grants Mary rights to the Sales account, now the folder list will show up and he can do everything he wants with that mailbox. But here's the thing. I get this a lot of times when somebody wants to do this. And it would take some input from the customer to find out exactly what they're trying to do. So the first question I have when this is done is, okay, you want to receive mail as, let's say, sales@company.com. Do you need to send mail as this account, or you just need to receive mail? If they just, and how many people? Is it just you, or next month do you want to add Bob? So let's just say Mary says, well, I just need to be able to get the mails as Sales. Well, it's easy. You're just going to add Sales. Don't even create a new account. Add Sales as an alias to her account. Now anything sent to Sales would just go to her inbox without touching her Outlook at all.
And if I'm not mistaken, that's the same process, or almost the same process. When someone gets married and they change their last name, you don't create a new email box. You just make an alias. Right.
You just make an alias. So we can make an alias called Sales. Now let's say, oh, well, yeah, I might want more people to get this message. I might, because if I'm out, I might want to have Bob or this. Then you can create sales as a distribution group. And of course, add the appropriate users.
Now, a distribution group, for those that don't know, is what?
So instead of there's kind of like a security group, like we talked about before, where you have a group, you name it something, and you can assign rights to folders or shares through the group. A distribution group is, let's just call it sales at company.com. So when you email sales, it just distributes it to everybody that you have in the group. So I could have a sales account that's a distribution group. I can put Mary in it, Bob in it, George.
You got it.
Terry.
Terry.
So I can put anybody in the group. Now, it's different if they want to send mail as sales, because the receiving it's easy. If you want to send mail, it's a little different. If you want to send mail, you need to create an account. And then you can do the manage full ask permissions, manage send ask permissions, and do what he was doing. And of course, you can grant multiple people access to this full permission or send as permission. Now, let's say they want to send as sales, but they need multiple people to get it also. Same thing. Well, a little bit different. You still create an account called sales. So you create an actual account, not a distribution group. You create the account, do the same things, but manage full permission or send as permissions, depending on what they need to do. And then, of course, you can go into the properties of the account and forward. In the mail flow options, you can set the forward to people. I'm sorry. You can set the forward to somebody. But this is where the power of exchange comes in, because you can't do this stuff easily. And I know it might be confusing, but let's say I've got 5 people who want to receive the sales account, and Mary needs to send as sales. I'm going to create the account called sales. I'm going to give all those 5 people, I'm going to give Mary the full permissions, okay? Because she's the only one who needs to send mail as sales. I'm then going to create a group, and I can call it something whatever, because the only people going to see this group is internal users. I can call it sales XYZ, okay? I'll put all 5 people that need to check that mail or need to get a copy of that mail in that group. And then I'll go back to the sales account and tell sales to forward a copy of this mail to this group. So now when it hits sales account, it's going to forward to all those 5 people, and Mary can send as sales by doing the manage full access permissions. A little confusing, but it's just a lot of different options you can do.
And you also see this at, I'm going to just give another example, is at a help desk. If me, Matt, and Steve, and Terry, and Door are working in a help desk environment, and people email helpdesk@podnutz.com, if I respond, or Matt or Steve, it looks like it's coming from helpdesk.com, or helpdesk@podnutz.com, not from Lalo or Matt. But you also see the same type of setup in that type of environment. So hopefully that makes sense also.
Yeah. And I do this a lot when, let's say, Mary is taking over, or let's say Bob leaves the company. Mary wants to see Bob's email. So a lot of times I say, hey, forward me Bob's email. And of course, what they mean is I want to see all Bob's email, not forward his email.
Gotcha.
So I can say, well, okay, do you want me to forward new messages, or do you want access to his whole mailbox? His whole mailbox. Because to them, forward me Bob's mail means I want to see the whole folder structure.
Which makes sense if you kind of repeat that to yourself 3 times.
Yeah. So I do this a lot. I go into and grant Mary full access to Bob's account, and then you go into Outlook and add an additional Outlook. Tell Outlook to open an additional mailbox. Type in Bob, then she can see the whole folder structure. So it works good for people who have left the company and they need to access their email.
All right. Thank you, Jason, for that email. And for those of you that we might have lost because you haven't really touched Exchange before, it's a beautiful thing. It is a little bit intimidating, but once you get your hands dirty, it's very powerful. So
you'll love it and always want to use it and never go back to Google Apps or anybody else.
I must say the Google Apps is pretty good. All right. That email is from Lynn. Hi, Matt.